The star? Yes, the kings were following that star. If we follow it, we're sure to catch up with them. Come quickly. We're talking the little drummer boy. Hit it. It was the 1980s. Ewoks were introduced into the Star Wars universe. The GoBots Guardians battled the evil renegades. Garbage Pail Kids grossed out everyone. And Aaron went through hardships and heartache until he met the Holy Family in Bethlehem. I'm your host, Jerry D, with another episode of Totally Rad Christmas, the podcast that talks all things Christmas in the 80s. Toys, movies, specials, music, and fads. If it was gnarly during Christmas in the 80s, we got it covered. Now, joining me are two Totally Rad Christmas all-stars. First, from Tis the Podcast, it's Anthony Caruso. My next guest has written 6 books on the Christmas special powerhouse, Rankin Bass. It's the official historian of Rankin Bass, Rick Goldschmidt. Guys, how's it going?
Good. It's going great. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you all back. It's been a while since you were both on. I think 2 years, something like that.
Yeah, for which one did we do?
We did Rudolph.
Yep, that's it.
Mm-hmm. We talked Rankin Bass in general, and then we talked about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and how they showed it all throughout our childhoods.
Yep.
But this one, I'm really excited. This one's about the little drummer boy. And this one, I feel, is one of those Rankin Bass specials that just doesn't get enough play. It's super underrated. It's actually really good. But I don't know if it's just because it's more religious rather than secular, like Rudolph or Santa and Frosty, but it doesn't seem to get as much airtime, and just most people don't even know that it exists, which is I think just a shame and a crime because it's fantastic. It's a really good special.
Oh, I just wrote an article about the little drummer boy for Retro Fan magazine, 24. So everything's kind of fresh on my mind, and it really has disappeared from television for the reasons that you just mentioned.
Yeah,
that it's a religious special, and what's sad about that is that's really what Christmas is all about.
Yep.
So the special that really describes Christmas is not shown as much. The Little Drummer Boy book 2 seems to get more airing now because of AMC's Rankin Bass Christmas Marathon.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other cable channels carry more of the Warner Brothers later specials of Rankin Bass, but the Little Drummer Boy, the original, is one of their best specials.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has a lot of the heart and warmth that Romeo Muller was famous for writing into specials. When I was a young boy in the 70s, our CCD teacher used to tell us to watch it. They would give us the little snow globe nativity scene to take home and tell us when the Little Drummer Boy was going to be on. It was a big event back then. In fact, they took out a full-page ad in the Tribune, Chicago.
Oh, wow.
That was this big,
Yeah.
For a television special. So it was very, very popular. One of their critical triumphs, and a lot of good things about the special that keep it alive. Now, the problem with it, though, is they don't have a 35 millimeter master on it. They can't seem to find that. So there's a 16 millimeter B-roll that they've been using for network showings and also for the DVD and Blu-ray releases. And it just doesn't look as good as it did when it originally aired. The audio is okay, but the video part of it's not very good.
Well, and I think I even heard on one part though, like because Greer Garson, that Rankin Bass always got a big name to be the headliner of each special, and so they got Greer Garson, who Academy Award nominee, just fantastic talent, and they got her to narrate this. But I think there's even a part towards the end when Paul Frees it was narrating, and I think I read that it was probably his scratch track or something. But
Yeah, yeah, I talked about that in my article, and I have the original Gas Company record album,
oh wow,
her original audio on it, so you can hear her words towards the end there.
That's really cool.
that is super cool. Yeah.
But you know what? The sad thing is the companies that own these shows haven't been treating them right,
Right.
since I started doing the Rankin Bass work. And I started in '92.
Oh wow.
That's when Arthur sent me his life story on a little micro cassette. So all these years, these companies have not treated the Rankin Bass specials well. And I'll go more into that later in the podcast about the newest releases. They call them the complete Rankin Bass Christmas collection, but what I would substitute is the word pathetic over complete. The pathetic Rankin Bass Christmas collection.
They use a lot of edits, I think, and cut out a bunch of other things. And then my favorite part about like owning a physical copy, like having something, is all the special features. And
Yeah,
they're
they're
always
bare
very
bones.
terrible with special features. There was a few. I mean, I know you've had a couple of interviews and documentaries on like one or two, but then when they re-release them for Blu-ray, they're like usually not there either.
Right, right. Well, unfortunately, Universal took over the early catalog of the Rankin Bass specials. Well, I got a phone call from a producer who I was aware of.
Hmm.
His name was Constantine. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And he called me up and he said, "Hey, we're finally gonna do these things right." And I was like, "Yes, this is good news." It took a long time, but this is good news. So he said, "We want to fly you out. We want to have you do the commentary. We want to do everything right. Use your archives. If you could call up all the people," which I did. Don Duga and Paul Coker and everybody. Then politics got involved, where they were listening to a guy that convinced them that he owns everything to do with Rudolph when he doesn't.
Oh no.
And they said, "Rick, you can't be on the Rudolph Blu-ray." And I'm like, "Why?" And he's like, "We want you on the Rudolph Blu-ray, but we can't have you on the Rudolph Blu-ray." And I said, "Well, the Rudolph Blu-ray is going to suck." I mean, I care about everything, and it isn't an ego thing.
Right.
In fact, I got paid for all of this startup work I did. So it isn't that I didn't get paid, or it isn't an ego thing. It's that Arthur Rankin trusted me with
Mhm.
this in the beginning, and he wanted to see everything done right,
Yeah.
which exactly how I am. I want to see it all done right too. We have the original 1964 ending of Rudolph, where the elf is throwing the packages up with the credits in color. So that could be part of the Blu-ray release. And now they're doing a 4K Blu-ray release. They don't even have the print quality to do 4K, which a lot of people don't understand or know about. But they don't have a 35 millimeter pristine print of Rudolph or the Little Drummer Boy or Frosty or Santa Claus is Coming to Town. So to put out a 4K, they're enhancing it somehow through computer. That's the only thing I could think of. And it's not going to look good. If you're very sensitive to high def and you know what high def looks like, you'll be disappointed. So anyway, getting back to the extras, because you said you love them and I do too.
Yeah.
Well, they said, okay, you can be on the Santa Claus is Coming to Town and Frosty. They can't say anything about that, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, fine. I'll do that. Then they kept involving other people that had nothing to do with Rankin Bass Productions or what Arthur Rankin wanted to see done. And they said, Rick, you can't be on any of this. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
To bring you up to date with what they're actually releasing now in October, and some of it might have even been released already. They got a guy to do one of the commentaries that was at a convention with me, at a comic book show convention in Ohio, that didn't even come over to look at the Rudolph and Santa puppets that we had on display there. He didn't even look at them. He didn't care about them. He doesn't like them. And they had this guy do one of the commentaries. I saw there's a booklet in the Complete Pathetic Rankin Bass Christmas collection. And all it is pages of the Blu-ray covers or DVD covers with who did the commentary underneath them. That's it.
That's, oh man.
I would love to say that they're being handled right and that it's good and everyone should go out and buy them and all of that, but I can't. All of the prints are horrible, and a lot of them don't even have the right openings on them. They're cut in the commercial parts, and the film's in bad quality, and all they did was transfer them over to DVD. That was it. They didn't restore them or remaster them or anything.
Yeah.
They did the same thing with the Little Drummer Boy. When I bought the Blu-ray about 4 years ago, I wanted to see what print they were using. And of course, it was the 16 millimeter crappy print. But not only was it a bad print, it was fading to black in the middle of the scene, which tells me it's for syndication. And they put more commercial breaks into it to stick in more commercials. And they left those fades in, which is like a kindergartner would know better transferring over to Blu-ray that wasn't right.
That something's not right there. So what do we think happened to the 35 millimeter? Is it just someone has it somewhere, or do you think it was maybe accidentally destroyed?
It's in storage, and it's probably in the NBC storage facilities, because NBC was the network that aired the 35 millimeter. All these, the initial, I would say the initial 10 years or so, they kind of got shuffled away somewhere. And a lot of the Rankin Bass prints were stored in New York at Magna. And Magna Productions or Magna Sound was owned by a guy who got credit in Rudolph for the sound, Ralph Friedman, but he didn't do the sound. He just stored the masters. There's another guy, the last name Pope, that I wrote about in my Enchanted World 20th anniversary version. I wrote about him because he did the actual sound, but Ralph Friedman got the credit.
That's a shame. Well, that's like I just learned from someone that Chaim Saban, who has supposedly written a ton of theme songs and for all these cartoons and shows, apparently just owned a recording studio and somehow ended up same thing, got like co-writing credits when he really didn't write most of these. So
Right.
I guess it happens, and it's a shame that the person that actually does the work doesn't get the credit.
Bill Finger.
That's where I
That's
come
true.
in
Yeah.
with my books. I can credit them,
Right.
and that's what I've been doing for a long, long time. And I like to see the people that were the creatives get all the credit. You
Right.
know,
Right.
uh, unfortunately, the people on the networks and people at Universal and Warner Brothers, they don't care about that.
Right.
Yep. Yep. I hear you. So The Little Drummer Boy was from 1968. I know Romeo Muller has said that this was his favorite of all the ones he's written. That's right, isn't it?
As far as I know,
Yeah. Yeah, it's the story of a little boy, Aaron, who and this I think this is like one of the darkest, and maybe that's part of the reason as well, but it's almost kind of one of the darkest portrayals in the Rankin Bass catalog because his parents are murdered essentially, and his house is just destroyed, and then he just hates people after that, which is
right,
a little bit different. I mean, Rudolph and Hermie, Hermie were very they were misfits, but they didn't hate people. So it's definitely a different direction for Rankin Bass, but I think that's what makes it more compelling to me.
Yep.
And
And
it
if
makes
anyone had an excuse to hate people, it was Rudolph, the way Santa and his dad treated
yeah, you're right about that.
him.
But I think it also makes his Aaron's redemption at the end even better when he finally goes to the newborn king and the Christ child, and he actually starts to drop all that hate and let go of it, and so there's something really moving about it, and so I can see why Romeo Muller would say that it's his favorite.
It's very powerful.
Hmm.
not only is it powerful in Aaron's rage, but it's also powerful when Baba gets run over.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Most people remember that part more than anything because they really, really feel for that chief. And fortunately for Aaron in the story, the Christ child brings him back to life, which is unusual too. But I mean, Romeo really knew how to write, and he brought out the best out of the story in that the ending is always so uplifting.
Right.
And I guess the only way to get to that point in this particular story, because it's such a simple story. Paul Coker Jr. used to say that Romeo's writing wasn't for kids. It really was for everyone. And I think he wanted to create something that wasn't just a simple children's story. It had to have drama.
Hmm.
And that was probably the only way that he could think of to really bring that drama into the story. So I think it works, but you're right. That could be part of the reason why it isn't aired, that desert bandits come and kill the parents, and they show it kind
And
of.
that's what I was about to add. We actually see him throwing his sword, and
Right.
yeah, it's
There's
definitely
worse
dramatic.
things on television today, obviously,
Right, right.
a lot worse things. So I wouldn't say it was a terrible, traumatic special, but it's not the benign show that Frosty is or Rudolph. It has a little bit more drama in it than we're used to.
It's true.
And it's a shame it's not shown more often nowadays, not just because, like you said earlier, Rick, that it's a reason for the season, right? Like the religious aspect is why we're celebrating Christmas, but
Right.
also as somebody, I grew up Catholic, so I went to CCD. I'm a religious
Same.
person.
Mhm.
I feel like it's a good introduction for really young kids, like a good little it opens the door to these religious parables and stories that they will eventually learn as they grow up. It's like making it accessible to them at a
Mhm.
younger age. And I feel like the fact that it's not shown nowadays, it's disappointing for I mean, I own it. I own one of the crappy re-releases, but so I'll show it to my kids one day.
Right.
But it's a shame kids won't be able to grow up with this on TV anymore.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it. I think it should have won an Emmy. I think all of the early Rankin Bass specials should have won an Emmy. The only one that was nominated was The Little Drummer Boy Book 2, and it
Really?
Wow.
didn't win. You know, Charlie Brown won an Emmy its first season. I think The Grinch won a Grammy for Boris Karloff's
Mm-hmm.
narration, but Rankin Bass, all of their specials should have won Emmys or at least been nominated. I don't even know. I think only The Little Drummer Boy Book 2 was even nominated.
Which is
But
strange
That
because the first one is, I think, as a story, just much stronger than book 2.
Mhm.
oh yeah, and it's like I said, it's one of the better Rankin Bass specials. So it is a shame that it's not seen on the network television broadcast or at least some big cable channel.
Right.
It really is a discredit to entertainment not to be able to have that readily available. And it's so much about what the holiday it stands for.
Right.
It's ridiculous that we don't see it as much as we would like to.
Well, and there was because I remember they would show it when I was growing up, and then all of a sudden it would disappear, and it was gone for a long time. And yeah, like you said, sometimes now we get it maybe once in the season, maybe on the day that they show just all of the Rankin Bass
Well,
catalog.
well,
But even
growing up,
oh, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Jerry. I just
No,
wanted
no,
to piggyback off that.
go ahead.
Well, growing up, I saw it most years at least once, but compared to
Mhm.
the play like Rudolph gets, where you see it like 10 times a year at ABC Family, right?
Yeah.
Or Santa Claus is coming to town. Yeah, even back then. But it played enough for me as a child where I still
Mhm.
have very fond memories of it today. And hold it up in that upper echelon of Rankin Bass, in my opinion, in terms of the stuff I like that they've done.
Oh no, I agree. But then it seemed like it kind of disappeared. And I
Yeah.
remember the same with um the 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, same thing.
Right.
It was there, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. And of course now, like you were saying, you can find them on what is it, AMC or AB, well, Freeform, I guess is now, but not always. And it's just one of those where I remember missing it. Like it wasn't there anymore, and I thought, well, what happened? It's like and I know this isn't Rankin Bass, but like with the Claymation Christmas Celebration, I used to love watching that, and then they just
Oh,
disappeared. So it's kind of like the same thing. I guess if it's not like their big, like you were saying, Rick, their big cash, their cash cow, they're really
Right.
not going to be feeding it.
same with Garfield.
Same with Garfield. That's another one. Yeah.
About 10 years ago, MeTV showed Cricket on the Hearth and the Little Drummer Boy at like 5 in the morning on Christmas Eve or something like that, 4 or 5 in the morning. And I thought, wow, if they can show those two, why don't they have me on and I'll talk about, the background of the specials and so forth. And I think I mentioned that to one of the producers, but ever since then, they never showed it again.
Mm,
So what happened, how they got the rights for that one airing and showing it that early in the morning and never showing it again. It's just odd how it's been treated, like you said.
yeah.
It's funny you say that because now that you mentioned that, I do remember like while Rudolph and Santa Claus was coming to town and stuff were shown like primetime growing up on ABC Family.
Mhm.
I
Right.
did catch things like Crick on the Hearth and the Little Drummer Boy and 'Twas the Night Before Christmas and even stuff like, Mr. Magoo, right? Mr.
Right.
Magoo's Christmas, like during the day, either very early on weekends or if I was homesick or like it was Christmas vacation. It was like on first thing in the morning when ABC Family would start their marathons.
Right, right. They do show it at odd times, and it seems like they're intentionally not making it part of their big prime time airings.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, but for whatever reason, I think it might have more to do with the Desert Bandits than anything.
It could be, but that reminds me. So, why did Rankin Bass or why did they choose to do this special? I know a lot of them they would kind of, or it seems like they would pick a song and then kind of build the special around the song. Is that kind of what happened with this one?
Yeah, they definitely. In fact, Arthur Rankin went to NBC. Here's what he did, and I wrote about it in this article in Retro Fan. Arthur was employing three or so animation studios in Japan. He had Toei and Mushi doing cell animation, and then he had the stop motion studio, which when they did Rudolph, it was called MOM. And they were housed in a big airplane hangar in Japan. And there were quite a few people working there. So Arthur had already sold House on the Mayflower to NBC, sponsored by the gas company. It's your gas company. That was the general term used for everyone's gas company in the United States. And they sponsored Ozzy, the Adventures of Ozzy and Harriet and some other things. So Arthur needed to keep the Animagic studio going with work. You know, they couldn't be down.
Right.
Otherwise, they'd have to find other jobs and disband. So he went to NBC and said, I have this little drummer boy special, and it's going to be in stop motion, sponsored by the gas company. Once NBC gave it a slot, he went home and got on the phone and had Romeo write this special over the phone. He did it with his secretary.
That's awesome.
Wow. Now that's definitely way above my abilities. I couldn't do that.
Right. Well, Gene Muller, Romeo's brother, remembers this because he was there on the other side, listening to Romeo, and Romeo was explaining what he was doing, and he came up with the whole idea on the phone so that the secretary could dictate it and that Arthur could bring it back to NBC on Monday, because he had sold it to him on a Friday, and they had to have it by Monday to confirm the slot for Christmas. So Arthur, I think, mostly did it to keep that studio going, because the next big thing they did in stop motion was in 1970, Santa Claus. So he had to keep them working, and that was how he did it. You know, he would suggest the special, and they would say, okay, good, we need this by Monday. And he gave them the script, and it was all set. He got them working.
That's crazy. That's amazing that he could do that. But I understand that because so I work at a Christmas store, and we deal with a lot of like professional Christmas light installers. And a lot of those guys are just lawn care guys and roofers and firemen and pool guys and pest control that they need to keep their guys working. Otherwise they'll lose like their best workers. So what they'll do is they'll do Christmas light installation during the off season, essentially, you know, when it's winter and in Texas, you know, nothing grows. So they transition into Christmas lights. So I understand that mentality, because you want to make sure that if you have the best folks doing it, that they stay with you and don't go off to do something else.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And there's, you know, a certain amount of money involved. And, Arthur was the only one from Rankin Bass Productions that would fly to Japan and oversee it too. So he was the one who kind of kept everything in check, you know, and made sure the product was coming out just right, the puppets looked right, the overall production was moving along to make the date that they would need it by to air. So he really oversaw everything, and that's why his name is first in Rankin Bass Production. He basically started the studio himself when he did the New Adventures of Pinocchio, and started them on stop motion animagic in Japan. And he kept doing that all the way till 1985. Their last special, The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus.
Which is that's also really, really well done. You can
That's
tell
really-
you can tell how far they've gone in their stop motion, how much they'd advanced, just because it seems the actual motion seems a little smoother to me than some of the original work. Or maybe it was the cameras. I don't know what it is, but something, it just seems a little more seamless, even though it doesn't have the charm that I think the earlier stuff does.
I mean, that's like trippy, even by Rankin Bass standards. And I know it's based on,
Right. L. Frank Baum. Yeah.
L. Frank Baum's book, but I love that one.
Yeah.
That one's, yeah.
Well, Arthur hated that one.
Did he really? Oh, wow.
He hated it. I had him sign, when he came to my house, I had him sign a video box of it for a friend, and he kind of slammed it down, and he was like, I didn't like this one. He didn't like Return of the King either, because they were shooting for something that they didn't quite reach Arthur's expectations.
Oh, I gotcha.
But the funny thing about The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus is it does have a group of fans that love it. And it is very true to a style. They began to become more into fantasy styles when they did The Hobbit and Return of the King and Flight of Dragons and Last Unicorn and all of that. They were experimenting with different styles. So I think that's why the Life and Adventures is such a drastic departure from the bright and happy Rankin Bass specials that we know. But that doesn't make it bad. I think Arthur just had a different expectation that they didn't quite reach with what they put up on the screen.
Would you call him a bit of a perfectionist?
Oh yeah, he was also a workaholic. We were similar in a lot of ways. That's why he liked me and trusted me, because I always saw things through. If I said I was going to do a book, I'd do a book. If I said I was going to get something to him by a certain time, I'd get it to him by a certain time. I never blew him off. And that's how he was. He expected that from people. And he was very demanding, the typical kind of producer that was a perfectionist. And he kept doing that. This sad thing about it is he was that way all the way till when he died. So he was still trying to do projects in his golden years when he should have just been relaxing and enjoying what he had done. He was still doing plays in Bermuda. One of them starred Michael Douglas's mother.
Really?
Yeah. And Michael Douglas came to every performance.
Wow.
And now the play, for whatever reason, I don't know that much about it, but the play wasn't all that well received by the audience. But they stuck with it. And like I said, Michael Douglas was there every night. So, I mean, Arthur was talking about bringing Santa Baby to the stage and doing a play, and even like in his last couple of years. So, I mean, he's always driven by that work, but at some point he should have just relaxed and enjoyed what he did,
So, okay, so he pitched it. They wrote it over the phone. Then did they send the scripts to Paul to start production on it?
This one, no.
Okay.
Paul might have been busy with something. They credit Charles Frazier with the design of the little drummer boy, but I'm not sure who Charles Frazier is. If you look him up on Internet Movie Database, that's the only credit that he got. And I couldn't really find anything out about him. So it's possible that that was a pseudonym for Arthur.
Oh.
Because Jules used a pseudonym in credits, which was Julian P. Gardner. Julian was, I think, his real name. P, Maury Laws told me, was for phony. And Gardner was Arthur's second son, his first name. So he used that. See, a lot of times, if you're not, I don't know if you have to be in the unions or if they allow a producer to be the writer too.
Oh, yeah.
Things like that might have played into it. And Charles Frazier could be a name that Arthur used. I'm not sure. But I do know this. I interviewed Teddy Eccles, who was the voice of Aaron.
Of Aaron, yeah.
For the little drummer boy. And Teddy Eccles was a very accomplished child actor. He's in tons of things. I just watched him in The Munsters. He was in The Lucy Show. He was in a variety of really cool shows. And in fact, his first television show was the Shirley Temple Storybook Hour, and he was Christopher Robin.
Oh, wow.
Of about, I think he was only 4 or 6. And he remembered all his lines. I couldn't believe it. He was just a really gifted child actor. And the way that he recorded for the little drummer boy was interesting because he worked on a few animated shows for Hanna-Barbera. He did the voice of Thule and the Arabian Nights, and he was the voice of Dorno, I think.
Oh, in the Herculoids. Yeah.
So he said when he recorded with Hanna-Barbera, they were all in booths, and they were all there at the same time. You know, all the various voice actors that did voices for the series. But at this recording session, and he remembered the exact studio and the streets that were nearby and everything. He went in and there was a microphone just set up in the middle of a big studio. And there was another, I don't think a microphone, but Arthur was there reading the lines to him so he could perform his character back to, you know, Arthur's reading Ben Haramed or whatever.
That would have been odd.
So that's how he performed his dialogue. And then it's interesting, it's funny that he didn't do the song Why Can't the Animals Smile? And Arthur gave it to him on a reel-to-reel to practice at home.
You never heard a lion laugh. You never saw a gator grin. A goose in a gaggle never gives a giggle. Why can't the animal smile? You never saw a smiling frog, a tickled lamb, a happy hog, a light-hearted camel, a merry old mammal. Why can't the animal smile? A barrel of monkeys, a pack of silly donkeys, an elephant, a caribou. Never been
and Teddy Eccles said he couldn't sing a sentence. He was a terrible singer, and he was in the Christmas episode of the Lucy Show called The Choir Master, and Lucy told him not to sing because it was bad, just to mouth the song. He remembered that. So he took this tape home and he was wondering, how in the hell am I ever going to sing this song? I can't do it. And the way he got out of doing it was he got a role in the movie In Cold Blood. And his agent got him to the set of In Cold Blood and told Arthur that he's unavailable because he got this movie role and he's not going to be able to sing the song. So Arthur hired Dick Beals, who did a lot of voice work for Hanna-Barbera too.
Was that
fact,
Gumby? Is that where I know him from?
He did. I don't know if he did Gumby at any point, but he did do Davy.
Oh, okay.
Goliath.
Gotcha.
He did a ton of stuff. In fact, Charles Schultz was going to hire Dick Beals. He thought he was the best voice for Charlie Brown until he found out he was an adult. So he ended up hiring Dick Beals later to vocal coach the child actors and at least one of the specials.
Wow.
Dick Beals, ironically, he looped the singing voice for Bobby Rhea in Hanna-Barbera's Jack and the Beanstalk, which was also sponsored by your gas company around the same time. I think it was in 67, 66 or 67. And he sang all of Bobby Rhea's songs. So he was known for being able to sort of mimic a boy's voice.
Mm-hmm.
Teddy Eccles loved what he did with the Why Can't the Animals Smile. He thought it was perfect. And he was so happy that Dick Beals pulled it off for him.
Man, that's cool. So
that's really cool.
So okay, so it wasn't Paul Coker that designed it. It was someone else that might be a pseudonym. But what about the actual puppets? I know, or excuse me, puppets, the stop motion dolls. Like what? I know most of them were just kind of discarded after a production. Did any of these survive anywhere, or?
A lot of them did in Japan, and all of my books have been going into that.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, my last two books, the Frosty the Snowman book and the book Santa Claus is Coming to Town and the Daydreamer, I talk about and show pictures from the Tad Moshinaga exhibit in Japan. His family hung on to a lot of his artifacts, but so did the animators. And like I mentioned before, there was close to 100 animators working on the stop motion Animagic. So you got to think a lot of those animators took home their counterparts and kept them because they were attached to them. You know,
I would want to, honestly.
Yeah, same here.
So I'm sure, and I don't have that many contacts in Japan to go around and check with all the animators. The one contact I did have was Masaki Izuka, who was like Arthur's third son. He was a young animator that took over some of the production aspects of the shows from 73 on. You'll see his name as associate producer. And then he went to start his own company, Pacific Animation, and they did the New Adventures of Johnny Quest.
Oh, wow.
Things. Yeah, they did some pretty big series in the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, Masaki passed away a couple of years ago. Most of the Rankin Bass talent has passed away. You know, there's very few left.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, Paul Coker just passed away in late July, and I've been writing about that for various magazines and doing interviews about him. So he was a great guy.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I only got to meet him that one time, and it was just for a little bit, but he seemed really cool. I enjoyed speaking with him.
He was a very, he always made fun of himself. So he never took anything very seriously. It's unusual the way that he worked for Rankin Bass. and a lot of these people worked for Rankin Bass because Arthur would tell him, I need designs for the little drummer boy. Obviously he didn't work on this one, but if he did, I think he did the little drummer boy book too. So he would do all these drawings and, color presentation pieces and send them to Arthur without any kind of contract, like we'll pay you, $800 for this or, $700 for that, nothing. And then Arthur would just send Paul a big check at some point, and Paul liked it, and then they just kept going that way.
You definitely couldn't get away with that nowadays.
No, but that's how it was done. And Arthur was generous too.
Yeah.
Bill Giles, who worked for he was a sound engineer on Rudolph, and he's still with us. He splits his time between Florida and Canada, and he did the sound engineer work on Rudolph, and he drove Arthur and Jules to the airport in Canada, and Arthur handed him an envelope, and it had $6,000 in it. And he said, I think he used it to buy a boat, and he was just happy with the whole thing, and that's what I found. Most people were happy with everything they did. Unfortunately, though, the voice work being done in Canada, they had a certain union contract. So the Rudolph actors only got paid for the first airings of Rudolph, and that was it.
Oh, that's terrible.
Wow.
It was a total of about $6,000 or so, which was a lot of money back then.
Right.
But imagine if they had better contracts, like the royalties they'd be making nowadays if they kept over the years, when they're still alive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they felt weird about it later because people would say, you only got paid $6,000 for that. That's on every year, and it's raking in millions of viewers, and who knows how much it costs the networks to air it. So, there was that going on, but Billy Mae Richards' Rudolph, she had a change of heart. At first she was like that, but then she opened up to me and we did radio interviews and I sent her stuff. And it was just a really friendly thing. And she knew she was going to be known for Rudolph. So she was happy that she was at least going to be remembered.
Right.
Totally red.
So how did they choose the voice actors for this special? Because we get Jose Ferrer. I mean, he was relatively big then. I remember him actually from the 1984 movie Dune. He played the Emperor.
Yeah, he did.
That's what I actually remember him most from. But I know he's bigger than that. That's just my entry point into him.
Why have you brought me here?
Your Highness, there must be some mistake. I never requested your presence.
Ah, but your lack of action demanded it. Your dreadful mismanagement, your bad judgment in assigning to Raban the governorship. You forced me to come here and set things straight.
But how did they choose him? Was he or Greer?
He had a very animatable voice. That's what they looked for.
Okay.
They looked for someone who was skilled, like a good actor, but also someone that was going to translate the animation, and he really did perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul Frees and June Foray worked together as Rocky and his friends, and they were Boris and Natasha.
Mm-hmm.
And so they played the mother and the father.
And why this exceptional greeting today, my son?
Oh, no reason.
Happy birthday, Aaron.
Oh, Father, Mother, did you bring me something?
I don't suppose this would interest you, young man?
A drum! My very own drum! Oh, Father!
Try it out, Aaron.
Paul Frees did all three of the Kings.
Yes.
Poor creature. She has been weakened by the long journey. Have we no extra beasts?
Wait, did that player not own a camel? Perhaps he would sell it.
And he did Howie, too. Ben Haramed's sidekick.
And more valuable even than gold, the precious Eastern resins, frankincense, and myrrh.
The little skinny guy.
I think this is where Paul Frees sort of became the go-to guy, because he could do a lot of voices in the special, and they wouldn't have to hire as many people. Plus, they got along really good with him, too. I think Arthur even introduced Paul to one of his wives. I think he had several, from what I heard.
Well, yeah, it's not a Rankin Bass special without Paul Frees. If I don't hear his voice in it, it just doesn't seem right.
Right. And June Foray was really good. They should have used her more.
Yeah. Well, she's voice acting royalty. I mean, she's, like I said, been in everything. I think she also does the voice of Granny, Jokey Smurf. You name it. She's pretty much been in it.
Yeah, I used to have her do voicemail messages for me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool.
We were close friends, and she knew a lot of people that I knew, and she would find people in California that worked for Rankin Bass and then told them to call me. Like, I got a call from Phil Kay, who might have been the sound engineer on Little Drummer Boy. He did a lot of the Rankin Bass specials in the late 60s, early 70s. The sound, like the sound effects.
Oh, okay.
She had him call me because she knew he worked for Rankin Bass and all of that. So we were really close friends, June Foray and I. And yeah, I'm trying to think about the Little Drummer Boy. Oh, yeah. On the music. Side.
Yes. I did want to talk about Maury Laws. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Maury Laws and I became really tight friends, too. The reason Maury and I became so close is I'm a musician. I knew, like, what he did and the qualities of what he did, the style of what he did, where he borrowed from some other musicians. A lot of his work came from the Nutcracker suite. That was what he was shooting for when he started doing GE commercials in the early 60s.
Wow.
And then that translated into the Rankin Bass style that I always talk about, with the glockenspiels and the little bells and all the different neat little sounds that he made everything sound so happy. Well, I asked him, we went in a recording studio and recorded a long interview, and I said, where did that song One Star in the Night come from? I thought it was a traditional Christmas classic that came out of like the 1800s or something. He said, no, in this case, it was a song that Jules Bass came up with on the piano.
Oh.
And Maury was like, hey, what about that song you play all the time, back in the day? What about that song? Why don't we make something out of that song? So usually Jules wrote the lyrics and Maury wrote the music. But Jules had written some music because he was a jingle writer for commercials when he started with Rankin Bass. So they kind of came up with that song together. And then the Vienna Boys Choir had to sing it phonetically because they didn't.
Because none of them spoke English. I gotcha.
Well, what a great, unbelievable. I almost think that might be their ultimate Christmas song, because it doesn't even sound like it was written by two guys in New York. It sounds like it came out of like I said, the 1800s or something.
Yeah.
The star? Yes. The kings were following that star. If we follow it, we are sure to catch up with them. Come, quickly!
and so they followed the gleaming star, little realizing where it was leading them.
The town of Bethlehem.
No, it really does. It sounds like a traditional hymn.
Right.
And I haven't analyzed them. Usually I like to, whenever I'm talking about a new piece of music, I like to look at the chord structure and start analyzing it. But just off the top of my head, I can tell that you're right. It sounded exactly like a traditional carol or hymn that you might hear. And I really enjoy that song. I think it, at least to me, of course, the Little Drummer Boy by the Harry Simeone version, sung by the Vienna, boys choir is classic.
Right.
But I actually think I like One Star in the Night better, like as a Christmas song.
And luckily, I got the unpublished sheet music from Maury before he passed away, and I included it in my 20th anniversary book with his permission.
Right.
So I have the sheet music in the book, which, anybody that wants to play it with their Christmas choir can get it from my book.
That's cool.
Can I ask a question here?
Yeah.
One of my favorite Rankin Bass specials, Rick, is Nestor the Long-Eared Christmas Donkey, which I know came 77, I believe.
Right.
Yep. So I know like Rankin Bass has always had like a very like almost non-existent continuity, even though it's supposed to be all the same world, right? It's supposed to be the same. So like when watching the Little Drummer Boy, and I know this came years before Nestor was even a thought in their minds, I always think to myself, wow, I wish we kind of got like Nestor at the nativity scene, like lying down beside Mary or something. How did Rankin Bass, how did the company decide on continuity between specials? Was it even something top of mind? Was it an afterthought? Like, what was their thought process with making these specials connect, if at all?
Well, they couldn't make them connect completely because they were on 3 different networks.
Mm-hmm.
Today, a lot of companies don't have that issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's one big company that produces everything. But in the case of Rankin Bass, they had Frosty running on CBS, but they had Frosty's Winter Wonderland running on ABC. So they couldn't put Hinkle and Karen and Hocus Pocus in the ABC one.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
The networks wanted them different, and they were the ones that made the final decisions on what they wanted. Arthur would take notes and make sure. That's why Rudolph looks so different in Rudolph's Shiny New Year, which was on ABC, than the one that started on NBC but then went to CBS. He's got more of a white, like, face mouth.
Yeah.
And Paul Coker designed him. So, the continuity part, that's the reason. But it's funny, when you bring up Nestor, I brought up Nestor in the first Christmas in my article in the magazine, and I featured some sidebars on those because, again, we're talking about a religious aspect is left out of the Santa Claus, the Year Without a Santa Claus, and all of those. And people really identify with Nestor because of the mother dying, just like in Bambi.
Like Bambi, yeah.
It's like almost an exact kind of ripoff of Bambi, but if you just ripped off Bambi, that wouldn't be enough, because the character of Nestor was so endearing and warm and everything, the way Romeo wrote him and the way the story is written, that Nestor is a special of its own. It's not just a copy of Bambi. So a lot of people identify with Nestor, and in fact, they want merchandise on Nestor.
Me and Jerry, I think, because me and Jerry are obviously huge Rankin Bass fans. I think I've told him offline multiple times. Man, I wish they sold Nestor merchandise. I'd love a little Nestor donkey to put in like my nativity display or on my tree or something.
I've been talking with Super 7, which is a toy company I've been working with the last couple of years about doing Nestor as part of a bigger plan.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I offer ornaments of Nestor with the photograph that I own, but that's about it for now. Yeah, you're right. The nativity scene, even the nativity scene for the little drummer boy, when that came out about, 10 years ago, it was really popular. And then the license for it was only a 1-year license. And when that ran out, now you can't touch a nativity scene set on eBay for anything cheap.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't get rid of it, but if I ever had to, like, yeah, for sure, they'd definitely be up there. So much of what they do is so awesome, and it is a shame that we tend to just get the same, Rudolph stuff, or every once in a while, like the Frosty and
the Miser Brothers,
or the Miser Brothers. Yeah.
Right.
Because I would love Hallmark to do a little drummer boy or like Nestor, like you said. Just there's tons of them that they could choose from, and I bet they'd sell. I bet they really would. I think there's enough people out there that have some sort of nostalgia and attachment to it that would, they'd scoop them up in no time.
Yeah.
There was nothing until after my first book came out. I don't know if we talked about this before, but my book came out in 1997, and Stuffins got the idea to do beanbag dolls. Reading my book on a flight to Japan for a toy fair.
Oh, wow.
They realized there's never been anything produced on the Rankin Bass shows, so they did the beanbag dolls. They sent them to me, and then CBS rolled them out 2 a week. And CBS at the time, the pharmacy, was only on the East Coast. So people who were selling on in the toy shop newspaper at the time, they were making a killing if they could get their hands on the product. So it became a big business because of the attention that I brought towards it in my book. And I've always thought, and I help with UNESCO a lot, some of the figures, but I always thought that if you were a big company and you own the Rankin Bass specials, wouldn't you want to have the historian giving you direction on what the fans want?
Yeah.
They never seem to do that. And I think that's why you don't see anything at Hallmark this year. They didn't even put the Rudolph stuff out this year.
That was the first thing I noticed when I looked through their catalog this year. It's like, no Rudolph. That was so strange to me.
They did the Heat Miser and Snow Miser and Frosty.
Right.
They stopped the Santa Claus is Coming to Town line after they only did like 2 or 3 ornaments. And, maybe the sales on that weren't as good, or maybe it was the sculpts. I like them. I have them.
Could it be that maybe their licenses ran out?
It could be that. I'm not sure. They're not even paying the right people for the licenses in the first place. And
that wouldn't surprise me.
I can tell them everything they want to know. What fans want, what characters they want, who owns it, and how to proceed. They're clueless as far as, they need direction, and I'm the one that can give them that direction.
They need their Kevin Feige.
Now, I'm sorry, Jerry. Just one more. I just wanted to follow up on something he kind of Rick. You just kind of mentioned it in passing, and I understand if you can't give us any details here, but you and Super 7 are kind of working on a project, a larger scale project here.
Yeah, it's been ongoing for 2 or 3 years now, and the problem with it is the guy that I was dealing with directly, he left the company all of a sudden over the summer. But I'm hoping that he returns because he's the licensing guy, and he was the one that was able to bring Creedence Clearwater Revival together. So that they could license things, like they were all legally fighting with each other, you know, and he's worked on a lot of big things like with Willie Mays and all kinds of licensing. So I'm hoping he returns and we can continue what we started, and that is dealing with all of the various Rankin Bass shows and films. You know, there's a lot of things that haven't been merchandised, and I know what will sell.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I know who owns them, and I know what we can do. So this is a large spanning thing. It includes Silverhawks. It includes Meki Kong.
Oh, yeah.
It includes all of the great Rankin Bass films and specials. So,
well, I gotta just tell you, I'm wishing you all the luck there and keeping everything crossed, because that would be awesome. That would be so awesome.
I want to be sort of the ambassador only to make sure everything is done right.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
There's a lot of things that have been done wrong.
Yeah, sculpts that just don't look right, or or like I love the Hallmark ornaments, but there was one year where they had Rudolph in like a sweater with
it was terrible.
It was weird. Yeah. Where unnecessary things, like we could have had Yukon Cornelius instead, or or Hermie. I would have loved a Hermie.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of things they could have done, and instead we just get another variation on the main character.
I would have loved one where you know how they have the animated one. Sometimes you push the button and they move or something. I would have loved one. You know how their eyes freak out when Rudolph's nose glows, like the reindeers you just push and they
That
would have been cool. Yeah.
You call this quality control, and there's no quality control on a lot of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're not treating it like they treat The Wizard of Oz or any other classic that you can think of. Rudolph is a classic. Why are they treating it so poorly?
Yeah, it's lasted 60 years just about.
Right.
Yeah, but I do gotta say that as far as Rankin Bass specials go, I really do like The Little Drummer Boy, and I think it's one of the best ones that they've put out. And I mean, to me, it's just, I love the songs, I love the atmosphere. I do like the transition of Aaron. I mean, he will not smile because he hates people. He even tells people he gets mad at them, calls them thieves and knaves, and then they have to draw a smile on. It's all these little details that really make you feel for the character, that when his sheep finally is run over basically and is dying or that all of a sudden when he finally gets that redemption at the end, it's like, wow, this means so much. And you would think something like that would connect to a lot of people. And so it's just a shame that it doesn't.
And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn.
Oh, Your Majesty! You must...
Oh, the player boy.
My lamb has been injured. You must save him.
He is near death. Oh, lad, there is nothing I can do.
But But you are a king!
A mortal king only, but there is a king among kings who would save your little friend.
The babe? But I do not understand.
It is not necessary that you understand. Go to him.
But I have no gift to bring.
Go. Look upon the newborn king.
When Baba runs into his arms at the end, I always like get a little choked up there. It's a great moment.
It is. It really is. Yeah.
Another thing about the little drummer boy, it's the only Rankin Bass special that has a Viewmaster.
Oh, really?
They sent a photographer to Japan to actually photograph them working on the sets. So you get these really pristine 3D pictures on the Viewmaster reel. And they did a audio Viewmaster for this one too. You know, they had that big Viewmaster that had a speaker in it that would read the the dialogue.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I never had one of those. I just had the regular.
I know that's like a fancy Viewmaster.
Yeah, they reprocessed like a Charlie Brown Christmas and Rudolph to be 3D looking for Viewmaster reels, but the little drummer boy was actually shot right on the set. And one of the pictures has him painting the smile on his face. You know, you're getting like right on the set photographs, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And they barely merchandise anything to do with the Rankin Bass specials other than record albums and, you know, a few little odds and ends here and there. And that's what, like I said, when my book came out, there was an explosion of merchandise, especially on Rudolph, Frosty, and Santa Claus is Coming to Town. And eventually the little drummer boy. Like I said, they did, not only did they do the nativity scene, but they also did some ornaments that they packaged with the DVD that you could only get when you ordered it online.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they did do some merchandising for him, but not enough.
Right.
I think today would be an ideal time to bring a lot of this stuff out in merchandise, especially for the holidays. I think even though things are not so good money-wise right now, you know, the holidays people are always willing to spend and go back to when times were great.
It's a vicious cycle. I was joking about this with someone the other day. You know, I splurge from October through December every year, spend the year paying off my credit card, and then doing it again. It's like a vicious cycle.
I'm looking at the little drummer boy nativity set now, and on eBay right now, one of the lowest is $229.99.
Well, that's not because it was such a great item. It's just because it was so scarce. The only way that you're going to get it is by paying $229.99 because you're not going to see it at any store.
Right.
You may not ever see it at any flea market or garage sale.
If you do, scoop it up. But it's like 300. There's a one for 400. I mean, it's really.
But my plan is to bring out better merchandise, hopefully through Super 7, but through whatever company, bring out better merchandise that really hits home with the fans, and that they won't be apprehensive to spend the money because it fills a void, you know?
Right.
I mean, Rudolph's been done to death. Even I, who am a big Rudolph fan, I'm not going to buy a 500 Rudolphs. I'm just not going to do it.
Well, it's like I said a few minutes ago. I will be first in line if you ever get if you ever reach some deal for Nestor merchandise to go out there.
Yeah, what is that company it's based here? Hamilton, whatever. They put out these houses with all the Rudolph figures and they don't even look like the show. They're just Christmas. And it's like, this is
is that the Bradford Exchange? Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, it's kind of cool that they're doing Rudolph, but there's been better Rudolph figures in Mexico. And I'm tired of it. So,
well, I do like the and we'll start wrapping up here in just a bit, but I want to say I do like the UNESCO Peter Cottontail ones that you put out, or that you helped with. Those ones came out really great.
Yeah, those go for some pretty good prices now too.
They do. I was looking into them and I wanted to get some, and I can't.
They're kind of scarce, Those were in the Hallmark stores for 1 year though.
Oh, I gotcha.
So they had a full display and they had stock, but that all ran out pretty quick. And for a while, you could get them fairly cheap because nobody really knew about them. But now people are looking for them and they want them. So they're kind of tough. Yeah, but that's another one that hasn't been merchandised enough. So if they did some quality merchandise on it, they could sell it.
Yeah, my oldest daughter, when she was like 3, I think, we found a little Peter Cottontail like Beanie Baby kind of thing that actually wasn't terrible. It actually looked decent. So of course we bought it for her, and we wanted to get the others, and we never found anybody else, just Peter. So every year at Easter time, she still brings it out.
Well, could I ask a question just before we wrap up, Jerry? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. And
this goes back to kind of you mentioned it at the beginning. I just want to follow up on something I think you might have asked it, Jerry, about how Rankin Bass seemed to get a lot of their ideas from a song, and they built a story around the song and built a special around the song. Was there any throughout their history Christmas song, for example, they couldn't get the rights to that they might have wanted to build a special around? Do you know of any of that? Is there any they couldn't do?
Not that Arthur Rankin ever talked about.
Okay.
But you're right. There probably were some that they had, intended to do. I haven't seen any scripts or any. There's some audio soundtracks that I have for specials that never got made. One was Raggedy Ann.
Oh, that's really cool.
They were going to do Raggedy Ann, and in the soundtrack for Raggedy Ann, they reused 2 of the songs. One was The First Boy Maker to the King, which they used for Santa Claus is Coming to Town.
Right.
Yep.
And the other one was Someone's Gotta Be First from The Easter Bunny is Coming to Town.
Easter Bunny's Coming to Town, right.
So they would reuse some of the songs that they wrote for other projects later on, but there weren't any Christmas ones that I have that I know for sure never got made.
Okay.
So maybe their success rate on that was 100%, but they did have other projects that they wanted to do that never got made. Like they wanted to work with Jerry Lewis in The Worst Way for a long time. And they even made a puppet of him, which is in my Rudolph book. And they made some songs. One was called Hey Bellhop. Another one was for Punch and Judy. He was going to be Punch, and Carol Burnett was supposed to be Judy.
That would have been cool.
That would have been good. Yeah, that would have been cool.
And Maury Laws told me on the set of the Big Mouth, Jerry Lewis movie, him and Jules went down to the set to discuss a project because Jules, I guess, even more than Arthur, wanted to work with Jerry, make something. And then eventually Jerry made, with Filmation, Will the Real Jerry Lewis Please Sit Down? And I think that became his animated thing, and
Right.
they stopped everything. But then, right around the time I wrote my Rudolph book, somebody got the Rudolph book and saw the Jerry pictures in it. And Jerry's son contacted me, Chris, I think it was, and said that Jerry wanted to work with Rankin Bass. So I put Arthur in touch with Jerry Lewis, who I've always been a big Jerry Lewis fan. But Arthur said he didn't have what Jerry wanted and nothing came of it. Kind of funny how all these, over the years, these projects that they started, still kind of get talked about and almost restarted, but not quite.
Right.
Yeah. But it does make me wonder. So what would you guys say would be your happiest memory or moment with the little drummer boy?
Well, when I was a kid, I remember I first saw this quite young. So I was devastated when Baba died. So my happiest moment was when I was in tears watching this with my parents, and they were comforting me, Baba coming back to life and running into Aaron's arms at the end.
And as Aaron looked at the babe, he thought it was the most beautiful sight he had ever seen.
And yet, there is something more about him. So much more.
Your gift, little drummer boy, given out of the simple desperation of a pure love, is the one favored above all. See?
Aaron's heart was filled with joy and love, and he knew at last that the hate he had carried there was wrong, as all hatred will ever be wrong. For more powerful, more beautiful by far than all the eons of sadness and cruelty and desolation which had come before, was that one tiny, crystalline second of laughter. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like the song, Why Can't the Animals Smile?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
That's happy and bouncy, typical Maury and Jules, and the interesting thing about that, and I think I talked about it in my article, is some of the sound effects are missing from that. When he's hitting the drum, if you listen to the soundtrack, you can hear the drum. But if you watch the special that they have now, it's dead track. He's hitting the drum and there's nothing. And there's a few other things in that segment that they're missing the sound effects from. They show the mice up in the bell tower. I think there's a sound effect from that that's missing too. And Baba is dressed up in some kind of a costume, and he's making like he's mean during the song. I don't know if you remember that. The animals are doing funny things while he's singing too.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
So I did talk about in my article too that I think Romeo Muller got the name Baba for the sheep from an episode of Wanted Dead or Alive, starring Steve McQueen.
Really?
Yeah. In the third season, there's a really funny episode, really well written, really well directed, called Baba. And they keep making fun of Josh Randall because he got hired to find a sheep, a pet sheep named Baba. And he finally finds him at the end of the special, and all is well. But I think that's where Romeo got Baba from, because Romeo loved great comedy. He was a fan of the old comedies like Laurel and Hardy and all of that. So I think he saw that episode because it's a great, funny episode.
Right on. Now we come to my favorite part of the show, which is a little segment I like to call To the Max. This is where we do our best impression of our favorite part of the special. And Anthony, as the guest, I'm going to let you go first.
Well, my favorite part of the special is actually, it's not going to be much of an impression because it's actually the narrator, the storyteller who has it. And it's, I mean, we talked about it. It's an emotional special. This one has a lot of heart and it's more serious compared to a lot, but it's the storyteller's little ending monologue, honestly. Like it hits you right in the feels. And, it's not really an impression because he just reads it. So he says, Aaron's heart was filled with joy and love, and he knew at last that the hate he carried there was wrong, as all hatred will ever be wrong. For more powerful, more beautiful by far than all the eons of sadness and cruelty and desolation which had come before was that one tiny crystalline second of laughter. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And I love it.
That's so good.
I know all of you out there saying, hey, Angry Anthony, maybe you should keep that in mind. And
that's good. So before I get to my favorite, I want to do some honorable mentions here. So,
okay, let's go.
So this part was a little bit of Aaron, a little bit of narrator, and a little bit of Ben Haramed.
Oh gosh, okay.
so Aaron says, "But I don't want to go near that mob. I hate people, all people." But the narrator says, "For it was true. Aaron hated people, all people." And then Ben says, "And do you think I love people? Ha! What a beautiful world it would be without people. But alas, one must exist with people."
I mean, he has the right idea in my mind.
There's some days, but actually, my favorite part was the special is actually narrator as well. So this is my winner here. Those are some good runners up, but here's the winner, and it's so it's the narrator Greer Garson saying, "And she brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn." Boom. Nailed it. All right. Next.
Love it.
But G.I. Joe taught us that knowing is half the battle. What do you think the other half is?
The other half of the battle is get a good lawyer to work out your rights issues so you can have continuity between all your specials.
That's true. Yeah, I'm going to say the other half of the battle is just planning.
yeah, there you go.
Plan it out better. Oh man, that's good stuff. Yeah, that's one of those where like I want them all to connect so bad, and they just don't. At the same time, it's kind of like the Marvel thing, where you have all these people that turns out were around during these events, like in the MCU, and so then we get retroactive continuity, the retcon. So like when the Hulk goes back in Endgame to see Doctor Strange and he meets, the Sorcerer Supreme, and turns out she's also helping in the battle that no one can see, that
no one can see, even though her job as the Sorcerer Supreme is to protect their reality from things like that.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So, it's like that. And I would love if somehow they could like retroactively insert Nestor into that scene,
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yep.
He should be.
Yeah, because he just goes back home to the owner that like beats him. It's terrible.
Yeah. How did they never even like make a plush of him? He has those big eyes and the ears. Like kids would have just loved to cuddle with him.
Oh, the ears themselves would have been, like they could have made a Nestor blanket.
Yeah.
And like his ears would cover you up or something. What a missed opportunity. Yeah.
Well, hopefully, this Super 7 line in a few years, maybe we'll get a Nestor toy or ornament or something.
Oh, I hope so. Fingers crossed.
I hope so. And in fairness, there's a lot of stuff on Etsy, but I would love an official one.
Mm-hmm. Same here. Same here. And I want Rick to write more books detailing these as well. Like go into some
maybe do like the religious theme book, like the Little Drummer Boy and Nestor the Long-Eared Donkey.
And Nestor all together. Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
I'd buy it.
I would too.
Guys, it's been so much fun just talking with you and learning about the special and all the everything about it, the way it's been navigated throughout the years. But what do you want to plug? Like Anthony, we'll start with you. Go ahead and like plug your show, and then Rick will follow up with you.
Yeah, so I mean, for listeners of your show, you all know me by now. I've been on enough. You can hear me at Tis the podcast that's determined to keep the Christmas spirit alive 365 days per year. Every Monday, me and my co-hosts, Tom and Julia, discuss a new different Christmas movie, TV special, TV episode, etc., and drop a podcast episode about it, where you can find that in wherever you find podcasts by searching Tis the Podcast. And you can get to our social media sites by going to linktree.com/Tis the Podcast.
Very cool. And Rick, what do you got coming up?
Well, that Little Drummer Boy article in Retro Fan number 24, I've been doing a series of articles for them, and they always do a nice elaborate layout with a lot of neat images, and this will be no exception. You can get my books at miserbros.com. That's miserbros.com, and you can stay tuned to all of my activities and appearances and things at Enchanted World of Rankin-Bass.blogspot.com.
Right on. Yeah, very excited. I have 3 of the books. I still need to get the others. I'm missing the first, the Enchanted World, the Arthur Rankin scrapbook, and the Mad Monster Party. But the Rudolph, the Frosty, and the Santa Claus are coming to town. I definitely scooped those up as soon as I was financially able. So
I did too. My wife got those for me for Christmas last year.
Nice. Yeah. Right on.
The best way to do it, knowing this from you guys, is when you buy a bundle from Miser Bros. If you buy like a 3-book bundle, you get the biggest discount. And the Enchanted book, the 20th anniversary, is the cheapest on miserbros.com. It's more expensive on Etsy and Amazon because they take a bigger chunk.
Right.
Same with eBay. So I can't put it as cheap as I can on the Miser Brothers website. And they're all hardcover, even though the website says soft cover. Wes Garlett's my business partner that passed away a few years ago. We were going to switch over to soft cover for a short while, and he changed everything on the site and then passed away. He was our webmaster, so I can't go back in there and change it to hardcover, but that's ultimately what you get when you buy from miserbros.com.
Yeah, nice. Excellent quality. The pictures are great, and I love the personalization that you do, where you'll draw, because you're also an artist,
right?
And you'll draw as well in there, and it makes it phenomenal. So, but yes, go check out those books, buy them because they're full of so much good stuff. And if you're a fan of Rankin Bass, you will love it. So, no pun intended. But on that note, guys, I want to say thanks again, and I'll end it by saying Aaron's heart was filled with joy and love, and he knew at last that the hate he had carried there was wrong, as all hatred will ever be wrong. For more powerful, more beautiful by far than all the eons of sadness and cruelty and desolation which had come before, was that one tiny crystalline second of laughter. So check us out on our social media pages, Facebook and Instagram at Totally Rad Christmas, Twitter at Rad Christmas, or our Facebook group, Totally Rad Christmas Mall and Arcade, where you can make your voice known to us as well. We post anything and everything 80s or Christmas related. And if you're feeling like Aaron drumming for the newborn king, leave us a review on iTunes. It helps us reach more people and spread some rad holiday cheer. Now, don't forget to check out our merch shop on tpublic.com and our super dope website, totallyradchristmas.com, courtesy of 'Tis the Podcast Elf, Tom Crow. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Later, dudes.